Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Bakert. We're here with fine jazz guitar player John Stowell, and we're going to talk to him today about a variety of things. This is part of what I call my quick hit series, where we have a conversation with people to kind of catch up on what they're about, and that's what we're doing here with John. I will spare you John's history and bio. We'll publish that. Where you can read about him. If you don't know John, so many people do that it kind of could be an unnecessary introduction, but we're always hoping to find new people. So that's what we're about. With that being said, John, I you know that you got a lot of stuff on the internet. You know, a lot of your stuff is on the internet, so people can go to YouTube and they can see you play, they can hear you play, you know, in various configurations between the teaching that you do. And then you also, you have performances in there with a variety of different lineups, from quartets to duos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, people can definitely check you out on YouTube. And I know there's some things that you want to talk about specifically, but one of the things that you've talked about in the past, but I'd like to address here, and that is that your harmonic style is you're as close to a piano player as I think I've ever heard, from what I can gather. You know, I hear a lot of dyads and obviously triads, you know, in your playing, you know, in as well as single note line stuff. I don't hear the guitar at all.
I'm just noodling a little bit and practicing to warm up while we're chatting.
You can noodle a little bit. And then your harmonic concepts are so different than normal. You know, what we normally you know test. I don't see you playing too many, you know, straight ahead, you know, A minor 7, you know this kind of stuff. You know, everything is these very wide interval type voicings. You know. And it's, I mean, you do it fantastic, and you get these great sounds. So, and then coupled with that, you have an unusual way of holding the instrument.
True.
So, which, you know, you're more like a classical player playing jazz, if you know what I'm saying. You know, and so I've talked a lot. Would you address how you came up with your harmonic style and concept of music, and then how it came to be that you play the instrument and hold it in the fashion that you do?
Sure. Well, I would have to credit my teachers with moving me in along this path, and they were both very helpful to me. This is in the early 1970s in Connecticut, where I grew up. Link Chamberlain was my guitar teacher, and I still occasionally run into some of his students on the road, because he taught for about 20 years in Connecticut and died too young in his 40s.
Oh,
that encouraged me to. He was a wonderful player, and I still credit him at clinics, because a lot of what I use in my own teaching came from him. So I love crediting him and letting people know about him.
Well, as you should. That's great.
Yeah, so Link encouraged me to be aware of the tradition, and I remember him transcribing a little Wes Montgomery solo for me at a lesson, but also to try to find my own path. So he gave me harmonic information, he gave me some listening and some foundation, but also then encouraged me to try to find my own way. And some of that was me being drawn to the sounds of piano on the guitar. My other teacher was a man named John Mahegan, who was a pianist who had taught at Juilliard and then eventually out at Yale, and wrote some of the earliest jazz theory books. So I did get some notion of how to voice things on the guitar from playing with piano players when I was quite young. And then moving on down, maybe 5-10 years later, I began to be drawn to some of those sounds and trying to create them literally on the guitar. So other people do this too. Jimmy Weibel was one of my very favorites, so I had the pleasure of knowing a little bit. I don't know if you ever met Jimmy. He was incredible.
I never met him, but I certainly am familiar with his playing. I mean, you know, I've been exposed to his playing. He's phenomenal.
He was terrific. So he taught people like Sid Jacobs, Howard Alden, and many others, Larry Kuntz. Jimmy worked and taught in LA for probably 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And was a sweet, gentle, humble man. And had this beautiful notion of combining sort of jazz and classical sensibilities together. So when you mentioned dyads, you know, some of these kinds of shapes that I would get from Jimmy. So,
right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So some of the shapes, I mean, a lot of that is essentially just deconstructing chords
Right.
into two-note voicing. So I tell people at lessons, you can begin to get into this notion of thinking of the guitar in a pianistic way by simply taking chords that you play already. Some of this involves either thumb and fingers or pick and fingers. In my case, it's pick and fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially being able to isolate notes on adjacent strings, some of those kinds of sounds. So I got that,
That's almost counterpunctual. I mean, you're almost playing, you're playing counterpoint in there as well.
Yes, in a way. I mean, it's not counterpoint in the way that Bach would play necessarily, but it's just it's inner voice movement. So if you can just see that, so you can see some of those shapes. Those are, I'm not necessarily playing chords that I don't know already. I'm simply deconstructing the chords, Bob.
Right.
So Jimmy, sort of knowing Jimmy, and sort of pushed me a little farther along in that direction. For guitar players who are watching this, who are interested in pianistic sounds on the guitar, besides Jimmy, I'd also recommend Sid Jacobs, who's about our age, who studied with Jimmy and introduced me to Jimmy, actually.
Right.
And Sid wrote a book called the Bill Evans Guitar Book.
I have that book.
About 15 of, it's a great book, Hal Leonard. And what Sid did was take as much of Bill's harmonic information on the piano and translate it to the guitar. So, if you want to play a voicing like this, so that's coming from Bill Evans, basically, are some of these sounds. And Bill also was a terrific composer. So, but even if you don't want to learn those specific songs, that's a great way to investigate the guitar from as a notion of sort of pianistic sounds. Ted Green was another. Gene Bertoncini is another. So I'm not the only one who approaches the guitar this way, but I just love these sounds dearly. And we can certainly appropriate some information from the piano and translate it to our instrument for sure.
Right. Well, that's I enjoy the way that you pull it off. It's really nice.
Thanks.
It's sonically. I don't have to be, some guitar players, you have to, they're almost like performance art. They do all kinds of, wild configurations that musically aren't really going anywhere or doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, just difficult to play, if you will. And, that happens because a lot of guitar players play with their eyes. They don't really hear. And so you can close your eyes and listen to you play, and you don't care what's going on the fretboard. You're just hearing this music coming from you. So that's a tribute to you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean by, I've seen a lot of performance art guitar players. I've gone to shows and watched guys play and I go, wow, it's dazzling. And then you buy the record and you listen to them and you go, oh, there's not much going on there, really. I mean, you have to kind of observe somebody doing it. And what they're doing is phenomenal physically, but it's just not musically, that rewarding to me sonically. So let's talk about your the physical way that you go about the guitar with, obviously with the angle of
sure. Well, a number of folks who use these voicings that involve stretching would tell you the same thing, that I don't have particularly large hands, so to be able to accommodate a stretch like this would be much harder to do if I had the guitar played at the normal angle. So to be able to, so I've been playing this way probably since it used to even be higher, but I brought it down a little over the years. But what this enables me to do is just play some of these kinds of stretches. So I didn't wake up one morning and decide to point the neck at the ceiling. It just kind of worked its way up slowly as I realized I wanted to play some of these stretches.
There are some I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
I've also found out that you can use the sides as well as the tips of your fingers. I've got light strings and low action. So I'm not only using the tip of my finger if I want to play a voicing like this or voicing. So for those voicings, even though it looks tricky to play that, there's not a lot of downward pressure, light strings, low action, the sides as well as the tips. So that's how I evolved that. And then you find chords, not every chord I'm playing is a difficult stretch, but a few of them are. So the other thing I found is if I'm playing a chord melody and I'm trying to get from one difficult chord to the next, rather than try to shift all the notes simultaneously, I'll grab one note, either maybe an open low string if that's part of the chord, or a high note. So this is also something that Jimmy Weibel might do. Instead of trying to play all these difficult chords one after another, Lauren Lofsky does this really well too. So I'm not trying to grab, he and I did a little lesson that we co-taught recently, and he is also very influenced by Lenny Breau, who was incredible. And this beautiful pianistic style on the guitar as well. So difficult shapes can be used in succession in a chord melody, as long as you're not trying to move all the notes at the same time.
Right.
So that's the thing that I've done. And some of this also involves some hybrid picking or thumb and fingers.
Right. There's a couple of pictures of you, your publicity pictures where you're actually like hugging the neck. You know, I mean, you
Right.
almost got it like right here, and
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I remember seeing those pictures. So tell me what's going on now. I mean, I saw your video with Bob Bowman. You did Bob's a fine bass player, and
He is indeed.
you did a performance not long ago, maybe a week or two ago. Was it?
Yeah, Bob and I go back to the 1980s. He's a terrific bass player, and he came out of Topeka. In fact, his dad, I found out recently from Bob, went to high school with Coleman Hawkins in Topeka.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So Bob was around jazz when he was very young, and he left there and went to New York in his 20s and worked with people like Carmen McRae, Thad Jones, Mel Lewis. So when he was playing really well in his 20s, then he relocated out to LA. That's where I met him in the late 1980s. And then he decided he wanted to move back to the Midwest. So he ended up in Wichita, in KC, Kansas City. Okay. So we worked there about 7-8 years ago. And then I got an email from him out of the blue, maybe 3-4 years ago, saying, I've relocated to Montana. Let's work. I said, fantastic. So his uncle built a family home, kind of a vacation home, right at the edge of Yellowstone on Hebgen Lake.
Oh,
and where I've been now. It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
I was going to say, that sounds wonderful.
It's terrific. So we've worked some there now in Montana, and Bob also has sisters in the Bay Area and in Portland. So we've worked some in Oregon, in California, and Montana. And he was here for a few weeks. I think he just left a couple of days ago, and we worked some here. And I'm going to see him there in Montana actually early next week.
Well, we're going to grab that video.
Terrific.
We're going to grab that video and make that part of part
Great.
of what we publish. I've seen you. I've seen you play with quartets and solo and all of that. And where is your heart lie? What do you really? What do you? What,
I think I would say I like all those different settings. I rarely play in a group larger than a quintet, but I like to play solo sometimes. Duo is a very conversational context that I like a lot. So I've done many things with singers, with bass players, with horn players. Dave Liebman and I did 2 records just in duo that were great fun. Dave is a consummate musician, as you probably know. I've had different working trios and quartets over the years. I guess maybe I've recorded a quintet record. I did one actually that I sent you the link to with my friend Dan Dean with lots of overdub. So it sounds like a band, but it's just the 2 of us with all these layered voices.
Yeah, I listened to that. And the
kind of an interesting project.
The vocalist, now that's him.
Yeah, Dan Dean played the bass and all the voices, and all that's the virtual drummer. He created that. We created that in his home studio over the course of a year and a half.
Yeah,
and I think it was kind of a special, fun project to do.
Well, hopefully they're all fun. So let's talk about your guitar for a minute. That's an unusual. It looks like you've got an instrument encased within a body. Tell us what's going on there.
So I've got 2 guitars from this maker, a man named Roscoe Wright, who also lives in Oregon. He's been a friend for probably 30 years. And this is the guitar I take on the airplane. I have about 7 or 8 different ones. So this particular one is a solid piece of graphite for the neck, bolted onto a piece of maple for the body, 2 pickups, RMC piezo, Andy Timmons DiMarzio. And this is just these are just plastic tubes that give me a frame, and a friend designed a little cloth covering for them, but these are just plastic tubes inside here, and that part disassembles and comes off.
On camera, it looks like wood. I mean,
it's not.
I can't tell that. I got it.
It's just plastic tubes. And the reason I need the plastic tubes is so I can hold the guitar at this angle, but those are just inserted with little metal inserts into the body. It would sound the same without the plastic tubes and be even smaller, but then I couldn't hold it at this angle.
I can see what it is now.
All over the world. Yeah, this guitar has been all over the world, Bob, and it never gets checked, even in the small commuter jets. Hopefully I'll be getting on planes.
So the plastic tubes come out to put it in a case, and it's in a little bag.
It's like a fishing rod case, a really small rectangular case. So even the little commuter jets with the tiny overheads for the briefcases, it fits right up in there.
Fishing rod cases are pretty small, John.
Yeah, this is not that much bigger. It's a little rectangular case, and it's very light. And I've over the years I've taken hundreds of buses, trains, cabs, and planes, and this guitar has been all over the world. I've had it.
It sounds terrific. Let me ask you a little bit let me ask you a little bit about the technical end of it. So, which pickup do you seem to use the most, and do you have it wired in stereo?
It's not wired in stereo. So if I tap on the piezo, you can hear that it's definitely there. So this is RMC. Yeah, but it's primarily the sound of the. I've got most of the high end rolled off, and this is a guitar, Andy Timmons is a great blues and rock player, but this
Right.
pickup has a good clean, he has a very good clean sound as well.
Right.
So Steve Blucher is the man at DiMarzio that I know who's designed pickups for Kenny Burrell, Jim Hall, and others.
No, they make great stuff. Yeah.
They do, and they make nice jazz pickups too. So I've used this pickup in a number of guitars, and I like it.
And not to digress into DiMarzio, but they got a rap that, they were the guys that came out with the original, hot rock and roll pickups,
Right.
And,
exactly.
and a lot of people think of them that way, that they don't know all the other things that they do and how good their pickups are. And,
I think that's right.
And the years that they have. But I think everybody had. I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the pickup that was got to be so famous that they used. But anyway, pardon me.
They have a lot of different models, and they do have some pickups that sound great for jazz, for sure.
Yeah, no, well, that's case in point right there with what you got going. So then, what amplifier do you use, and do you use any effects?
Just a little reverb and stereo. And lately, if I'm driving, if I'm flying, I take a little stereo RV7, an older model that Hardwire makes with Lexicon chips. So I just have a little reverb and stereo. So I've got a stereo amp set up on the East Coast. A friend loaned me a beautiful, kind of a boutique tube amp that I've been using there. And I sometimes run that in stereo with a little solid state amp. That's what I do out here as well. So when I'm driving, I use acoustic image. So I use one of the Claris 4 heads into a cabinet with a down-firing 10, front-facing 10, and then a new extension speaker he has called a double shot with 2 opposing 10s and a front-facing tweeter.
And who is this? Who is the speaker made by?
Those are all made by Acoustic Image, Bob.
Okay, they're all made by Acoustic Image. Right?
Yeah, and I think Rick Jones does a terrific job with his gear, and I've been using Acoustic Image for years. And then a friend about probably 10 years ago turned me on to a company, small vintage tube amp company in Florida called VSA, Vintage Sound Amplifiers. So I use something that's a little like a Princeton, single 12 with, I think it's about 30, 40 watts. So I'll put a tube amp in the middle, and then put the solid state amps, one extension speaker and the other with the amp head on either side of that. So I have a little array if I'm driving.
Right.
And the idea is not to make it loud, but tubes and solid state give you different sounds. I like pairing them together.
Oh yeah, in my own, back when we were setting up, for gigs and all that, I like using a Hendrix and Bud actually, or a Hendrix and Jazz amp or something like that for that sound. And then I've got a Princeton size tube amp. It's made by a company called Third Power, and I would like to blend those as well. And it gives you, a lot to do. But of course, that's a lot of setup time. So we try to keep these things kind of brief. Tell me what's going on with you today, and what should people be looking forward to, and lessons online, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us what's going on with you.
That's great. Thanks for letting me slip in a few plugs.
Please.
So lots. I appreciate it, Bob.
Yeah.
So lots of records on the Origin label. So you just can go to Origin and type my name and you'll see about 20 odd CDs. The last one was the one we mentioned briefly called Rain Painting with Dan Dean. The next project will be String Quartet with trombone with my buddy Dave Glenn. We're still mixing that. That probably will come out on Origin. So always looking for, different projects to publish and put out. I generally put out 1 or 2, 3 things a year. And so those are all ongoing.
Did I hear you right? It's guitar and trombone?
Guitar, trombone, and string quartet. My buddy Dave Glenn arranged the string parts. Is mostly, I do some off the wall things.
I can't wait. Well, you always do off the wall things. I can't wait to hear that. That's.
I'll see that you get it. It's pretty nice. I mean, we're mixing it down now. This has taken us about 4 years to do this one because Dave lives in Walla Walla, Washington. It's about 4 hours from me, and the string players live all over the country.
Okay, so I got to ask this question. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, and I don't mean to. I got to ask you. So, who did the arrangements of the string quartets?
That was Dave. He can orchestrate. That's one of the reasons I wanted him on the project. But guitar and trombone sonically is a nice. He and I go back to the 1970s,
right,
in New York. And he popped up then on Walla Walla, Washington about 25, 30 years ago and led a jazz program there. So we've been back in touch over the last 20, 30 years doing some gigs and workshops together. And we recorded some duos and I knew he could orchestrate. He's done commission symphonic work. And I said, hey, Dave, how about taking some of your tunes and my tunes and writing some little string quartet interludes?
Wow.
Said, I'll give it a try. So that's what we did. And the quartet is spectacular. It's a working string quartet that comes every year for a chamber music festival where he lives. And he was able to get them in the studio this year in June to record the parts that he arranged. So we're about 90% there now with it. It's taken 3 or 4 years to make this happen, but it will get finished.
I love string quartets.
I do too.
Oh.
So that'll be out fairly soon. I hope maybe this year. Starting to do some touring, multiple courses and lessons available on the True Fire site, DC Music, Mike's master classes, individual lessons, Mel Bay, and the CDs, and Zoom workshops for schools, private lessons. So all of that has enabled me to survive the last 1.5 years, and starting to get out and how to do a bit of traveling again.
So if somebody wants to take, I'm sorry, there's a little delay, and I don't mean to step on your words. So please finish.
No, just to say that, that all these things have been ongoing, and thankfully I've been able to kind of pivot and try to keep things going online during the pandemic. But in a normal year, I'd be traveling between 7 and 9 months of the year. So I don't know when I'll be able to get out at that level again, but starting to get out again a bit, and I hope everyone else is too.
Well, let's hope. So I have another question for you. So wait a minute, you were saying, now this is the part I got to edit out because I'm trying to remember I lost my train of thought there. I lost my page, as a friend of mine used to say. String quartet. Oh, and so if somebody wanted to take lessons from you, private lessons, assuming Zoom lessons. If somebody wanted to take private lessons from you, is it a Zoom experience? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I do Zoom, Skype, Facebook Messenger. They all work fine.
Any of them?
Google. Yeah, they all work. You can just reach out to me on my website, or if I also teach through True Fire, you can get me on the True Fire site. I'm easy to reach, and I enjoy teaching lessons. I don't have a lot of regular students, but I'll have lots of one-offs, and I enjoy them.
I think one-offs are great because if you're studying with someone like yourself, the kind of person that wants to study with you, you're going to give them a lot of material, and it's going to take them a while to digest it. You know what I'm saying?
I send 70 pages or 80 pages of PDF material to anyone who takes even one lesson. These are articles I've written over the years. So you got a good chunk of information if you want.
Yeah, that takes them a while to get all that together, and then they call you back up again and say, "Hey, I'm ready. I think I got that. Let's move on." Yeah, that's a great way to learn. I think sometimes when you're there every week, it doesn't. You don't take you find out who's really serious and who's not in a hurry when they go away, and then they have to assimilate all the material or as much as they can possibly assimilate. So you have any live performances coming up? You mentioned
with
Montana.
my friend Bob Bowman. Yeah, I'm over there with Bob for about 7-8 dates in early August. So we'll be in Bozeman, in Basin, in where else will we be? Hebgen Lake, where Bob is. I've got something at Great Falls with Rob Kohler, who's another good bassist who lives over there. So I've got pretty busy over there for about 9-10 days.
Well, we're in the process of coming up with a calendar for people to post their gigs. It's a lot more difficult than what you would expect. But we are in the process of putting it together where we'll be able to, you'll be able to upload your own performances, where they are, how people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's great.
So no, I think that's great. Well, if you're going to be in Montana during those months, they need to go check you out to get their jazz fix.
I would be happy to see anybody on the road.
Is there a question that you'd like me to ask you that no one's ever asked? Is there something you'd like
Good question.
Misconceptions or?
Not really. I mean, I think what I would like to do, though, before we're done, for the record, is just say how much I appreciate what you're doing with the magazine, and I'm very grateful to be a contributor sometimes, and I love what you're doing, and you're really trying to support our community, and you're doing it in a really nice way.
Well, thank you. My partner in crime, Joe Perry and Raul and Valerie Amador are a big part of this. Obviously, a big part of it. They are, it's without them, it doesn't exist. We're a team. So I don't want to take all the credit by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, please pass along my thanks to them too.
Yeah. Now, do I send you the $50 directly, or can I PayPal it to you for the plugs? I got that from
Carrier Pigeon.
I got that from Frank Vignola. He paid me a compliment one time when I sat in with him at one of his concerts, And he said, now, Bob did slide me a 50 spot, so we got to make sure he gets a tune, that kind of thing. So it's
Sure.
pretty cool.
Frank has a sense of humor.
He's a great guy. Well, listen, thank you so much, John. We've been talking about doing
pleasure,
this,
Bob.
and we'll keep the conversation going. And I appreciate all you've done to support. You've sent us some great people to include, and we appreciate that. And you're a great ambassador for us as well. So have a great day, John.
You too, Bob. It's my pleasure. I look forward to talking again in the future.
All right. I'm sure we will. Thanks, John. Bye-bye.
Great, Bob. Pleasure, Bob. Thanks.
Bye.